Welcome to my spoiler review of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I did my non-spoiler review back on Thursday when the movie first came out. I was supposed to do the spoiler review yesterday, but I got caught up with some things. So here is my spoiler review for this movie. If you want to hear about what I thought about the acting and the performances and the special effects and all that, the non-spoiler review is the place to go. Here I want to discuss specific scenes that I liked and things that I did not like that are going to involve plots and plot threads. So, once again, you've been warned. If you have not seen the film, go see it. Come back to this video. Let's go ahead and talk about Shang-Chi and what I liked about it. First of all, I loved the fact that kept flashing back to him as a kid. I love that. It gave off vibes. I mentioned in my non-spoiler review yesterday. Gave off vibes of Shogun Assassin, classic kung fu films. This movie tries to balance like modern superhero movie with classic kung fu film, and I thought it did pretty well. I will say I thought the first half was better than the second half. I thought the second half kind of became a paint-by-numbers Marvel flick, just with more Asian influences. I thought the first half, though, was very strong. I loved the scenes and the chemistry between the two main characters, Shang-Chi and Katie. I loved the scene on the bus. That was a tremendous fight scene. The way that he fought, the members of the Ten Rings was just so fun. Like seeing the laptop get sliced in half and he apologizes for it. The dude with the cell phone, like all that stuff I thought was a great touch. Having Katie try to control the bus and whatnot with no brakes, I thought was fantastic. It's like the movie Speed, except with martial arts action. I really enjoyed that a lot. I loved the sequence with Shang-Chi going and fighting his sister. Seeing Wong make his cameo with the Abomination, that was cool. Seeing the whole nightlife of China. I've never been to China before, but this movie made me want to go. Like, it really did. Even though there's probably some scary stuff out there, because, the government's kind of questionable and really don't know much. Like, the way China looks is like Vegas. At least that city did. And that was cool. And the fact that, his sister also became, an assassin. Classic kung fu stuff, man. I mean, I eat this shit up, yo. Since I was a kid, I've been loving this kind of stuff. Really enjoyed that. I loved when they actually met with the Mandarin and how he gave the whole backstory of how he loved his wife, and then we found out later on he was being tricked by the Soul Eater. I loved the fact that the Mandarin has a heart. And granted, I think a lot of times with these movies they try to make the villain sympathetic, and the Mandarin back in the day was just a dick villain to Iron Man. But I really enjoyed how here in this movie he's a great villain, I thought, because he's a guy who is ruthless and determined and almost obsessive, but he's doing it for reasons that make sense. He feels a bit of guilt, even though he won't admit it. He feels a bit of guilt and some projection. You can read between the lines here of what happened to his wife. He feels like he'll do whatever it takes and use all his resources to bring her back. It's kind of a sad, tragic story, man, that this guy was so wealthy and so successful and so powerful with the Ten Rings, but what he wanted he couldn't get, and that's his wife to come back to life. Meanwhile, the kids want to honor her memory, and I loved how the way she went out, that was really dark stuff for Marvel, The fact that Shang-Chi had to witness her getting killed when he was a kid, dude, that was freaking crazy. Like that, again, that goes back to Shogun Assassin, man. There's so many things in this movie that harken back to those classic kung fu films, and those movies of the past all have very simple plots. You don't have to, do some kind of advanced, reminiscence type of stuff there. They're very relatable stories, and you can relate with all the characters here, including the Mandarin. You can relate with him as well. I love that. I loved the training between everybody at the village, and I did like Ben Kingsley appearing in the movie, the fake Mandarin, so to speak. I thought they tried to kind of make up for the fact that he wasn't the real Mandarin in Iron Man 3, which got a lot of hate when it came out because of that reason. And they kind of showed Ben Kingsley's more comedic side because he had to play the character again and really go full bore with the comedy. He had a couple of really great scenes when he was playing dead. That was great. When he's out there, just like quoting like the story about how he thought Planet of the Apes was real. Like that was just fantastic stuff. But it also makes you wonder, like, did this guy really pretend to be the Mandarin? Like, it's a bit over the top to really believe that. Obviously, it was Killian who was really in charge of it, but still, like, it's a little wonky there. But I don't know if they really were able to make up for Iron Man 3. I mean, the whole idea is that this Mandarin is like the real Mandarin from the comics. He's really not. I mean, the sympathetic character that was this Mandarin is not the one from the comics, which is why I said in my non-spoiler review, if you want them to have the Mandarin like the comics, you're not going to get that with this movie. You're just not. But I like what they did because I like the character and I like his motivations, and he was so determined to bring his wife back to life that he would even believe these phantom spirits telling him it could happen, like believe that this lifelong quest to, bring her back. And the fact that you later find out that it was the 10 rings that kind of, and that thirst for power that kind of led to him never giving up who he was. But at the end of the film, he does realize that he has to pass on his power to the next generation. And he does that with Shang-Chi, and that was great. I will say that the part where Katie is driving and the force is like closing in on them, again, a bit unrealistic in a sense because she doesn't have those kinds of senses, even though she is a good driver, and she proved it earlier in the film. She's a great driver, in fact, and we see it because they both work as these valet parking people, so she knows how to drive. But it just felt like the force closing in too fast. But again, it's a fantasy movie. We have flying dragons in this movie, all right? I'm not going to complain about that. It's not really it's a nitpick. When they got to the village, though, the movie did kind of slow down a bit. I felt like it was, again, not bad, but just less interesting. But seeing them train and see him get his outfit and everything was great. Seeing his sister kind of learn to be more of a badass than she already was. Meeting his aunt. All that stuff was great. When the Mandarin shows up and they have the big fight at the end, again, we've seen lots of these fights in these movies before. I was hoping for more of the wire fu because we saw a lot of tributes in this movie to wire fu. The scene where they were on the scaffolding earlier in the movie at the nightclub with the fighting arena, that was amazing. Even the combat on the bus, like that's the kind of wire fu stuff like that I love. Classic Jet Li films, Chow Yun-fat films. Like I love these movies, so seeing that was great. When we got to that final sort of big battle, with the 10 rings like army against the army of the village or the villagers, I thought it was a bit. I don't know. I thought it was a bit. Just very paint by numbers Marvel. Like we've seen that in so many Marvel movies, little armies fighting. It's not like it's a bad thing. It's just something that's kind of like a thing we see a lot in movies, especially these types of movies. But again, it wasn't terrible. It was just not as good as the wire fu. I was hoping for more of that. The fight with Shang-Chi and Mandarin near the end, again, I thought was a good mix, but I wanted more kung fu stuff, a little bit more. And then at the end, when you actually see the monsters, the Soul Eaters come out of the mountain, it really gave me Mortal Kombat Annihilation vibes, especially with the sound effects. Like, seeing the dragon awaken and come out of the ocean was awesome. It was definitely significantly better CGI than Mortal Kombat Annihilation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's been like, 24 years or whatever since that movie came out. You would think that technology has improved, and it has. But you could still tell the dragon was not real. And I think the reason for that is because there's no such thing as a real dragon that we know of, right? So we've never seen a real dragon before. And I think that kind of helped slash hurt because we see these artistic depictions of dragons in, different forms of media, art, comics, video games, and we have these ideas of what they would look like if they were real. Very scaly, or maybe not. And I feel like with the movie, they did the best they could. It definitely was a lot of fun seeing that dragon kick ass and seeing the fight with the giant soul eater and the dragon at the end. That was cool. I still think the Mandarin as a villain was more interesting. It became this sort of kaiju battle at the end, which is kind of what we saw a little bit of in Suicide Squad. A little bit, not too much. Here it really felt like that. And again, I just felt like the end was not as strong as like the beginning and middle. That's my opinion. I just felt like that was the case. Now again, I liked it though, and it was very emotional having the Mandarin get his soul taken, and the dragon, they almost killed the dragon, and then when Katie shot the arrow, it was a direct hit. Again, it harkens back to The Hobbit, and it harkens back to fantasy tales. She obviously does not have the skills to shoot an arrow that skillfully. I mean, you'd have to shoot the arrows multiple times to connect that well, but she did it. It's fine. Some folks are going to nitpick it. It's whatever. It's a fantasy tale. And Shang-Chi finished off the Soul Eater with the 10 rings because when he uses them, he knows how to use them better than the Mandarin because of his mom and her kind of, technique. That was all good stuff. I really enjoyed that. And it was very powerful and very emotional, kind of what happened with the Mandarin and Shang-Chi. I thought that was good stuff. And at the end, when they kind of said goodbye to their parents, it was very touching. And then, of course, the scene where Wong goes to pick them up to take them to, the Sanctorum or whatever, where they communicate in the mid-credit scene with Carol Danvers and the Hulk, Bruce Banner. That was all good stuff. And but we find out basically that the 10 rings are a beacon. They're sending a beacon out, and we don't know what this beacon is for. I've seen some people say Galactus. I've seen some say another space threat. The Beyonder has been discussed. Some are saying this is actually the first clue that Secret Wars will be the big sort of Marvel event movie of Phase 5. We believe that with Phase 4, what we're in right now, the big event movies are going to end up being Strange, Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four. But that could also be wrong. I really don't know. Because we do have this rumor of Secret Wars being the long-term plan. So for Phase 5, somebody like the Beyonder could be getting signaled. And of course, with the multiverse being a thing, now they could do anything. Or it could actually be Galactus, but I feel like, the clues that we got is that the 10 rings are older than 1,000 years old. And the thing is, the Infinity Stones are too. So it could just be any other artifact. It could be a hybrid of the quantum bands. There's a lot of things that it could be, but it is a teaser for the future. Captain Marvel is still off doing her thing, whatever she's doing. Her hair has regrown. It's been a year since then. And of course, Shang-Chi's sister is now in control of the 10 rings. So, presumably speaking, they're still training ninjas, and we'll see them return at some point in the future. Probably to help out the good guys when the next big cataclysm occurs, in Marvel. Whenever the next big villain shows up, they may call in the 10 rings to help them. It's not going to be a villainous organization anymore because she's now just training these, training these warriors to be kind of her army. So we are going to see a lot more cool fights and things of that nature in the future from the 10 rings. So I did like the movie a lot. I really did. I like the Dragon Ball reference, of course. Kamehameha was mentioned. That was cool. That was, I don't even know. I mean, that should tell you how mainstream Dragon Ball is when it gets mentioned in an MCU movie. That should tell you right there how big Dragon Ball is. When it gets a mention, that means that Dragon Ball exists in the MCU canon. Like Dragon Ball as a fictional story exists in the MCU canon. That's pretty damn cool. Anyways, That's all I have for you. What did you think about Shang-Chi? Spoilers, leave them down below. What'd you think? What your favorite scenes, least favorite scenes? What you like and dislike? I want to know. And we'll have a lot more to talk about soon. Eternals is next, I believe next month. So that's going to be one where I'm not really too into it yet, but after seeing this, it has rekindled my thirst for more MCU movies. So I'm excited we're going to get that very soon. Thank you. Talk to you soon.